the kiss that shook Spanish soccer. Hi there, everyone. I'm Jeff, and this is Plain English, where we help you upgrade your English with current events and trending topics. This is lesson 614. That means JR, the producer, has uploaded the full lesson to plainenglish.com/614. Coming up today, the story about the Spanish women's soccer team should have been about how they beat the odds to claim their first ever World Cup victory in Australia this year. Instead, it's about an unwanted kiss. The story is ever changing, but we'll give you the latest on today's episode. In the second half of the audio lesson, we'll talk about the phrasal verb pile on, and we have a quote of the week. If you're listening and if you want to read the transcript, remember, you find the transcripts by the episode number. So this is 614. So go to plainenglish.com/614, and that's where you'll find the transcript. Ready? Let's get going. The FIFA Women's World Cup took place this year in Australia and New Zealand. The U.S. team was the favorite to win, but they were knocked out in the round of 16. Going into the tournament, England and the Netherlands were also expected to compete for the trophy. Spain had been ranked 6th in the world, but wasn't considered a major contender. The Spanish women's team had won just a single World Cup game in its history, and the Women's World Cup dates back to 1970. But Spain advanced to the finals and beat England 1-0 to win its first World Cup. Unfortunately, their unexpected victory was overshadowed by what came after the game. After the game came the medal ceremony. There was a raised platform on the field, and each member of the winning team came up to the platform to receive a medal. One of the people presenting medals and congratulating the players was Luis Rubiales. Luis Rubiales was the president of the Royal Spanish Football Federation, the country's national soccer federation. It governs both the women's and the men's game. As players came up to get their medals, he hugged them and kissed them on the cheek. Nothing unusual. But then came Jenny Hermoso, the star forward of the team. When she got her medal, Rubiales put his hands on either side of her face and kissed her on the lips. To many viewers, this was shockingly inappropriate. Hermoso later said the kiss was unwanted. She said that no person in any work, sports, or social setting should be a victim of these types of non-consensual behaviors. The whole team later signed their names to a letter supporting Hermoso. At first, Rubiales refused to apologize for the kiss, saying he didn't pay attention to stupid people. He later issued a tepid apology, saying the kiss was normal and natural and a spontaneous act of celebration. The players on the women's team didn't see it that way. Dozens of them sent a letter to Spain's Soccer Federation saying they would refuse to play for Spain's national team again until Rubiales had been dismissed. They also demanded changes in how soccer is governed in Spain. Soccer fans largely took the side of the players. Much of Spanish society and the international soccer world piled on. The Spanish Soccer Federation initially sided with Rubiales, but later called on him to resign. FIFA, the international governing body of soccer, suspended Rubiales. Government ministers sided with Hermoso. A Spanish court opened an investigation into whether the kiss was sexual assault. Rubiales was given a restraining order prohibiting him from being within 200 meters of Hermoso. But for weeks, Rubiales hung onto his job, refusing to resign. He called the accusations against him false feminism. It was clear, though, that he couldn't stay for long. The country's best female soccer players refused to play under him. In women's soccer, as in the men's game, players have contracts to play for professional teams, and those teams can be anywhere. Hermoso, for example, plays for a Mexican team, but she's played for other teams around Europe. Apart from their professional contracts, they also play in international competitions. And in those international competitions, they play for their home country's national teams. Hermoso is 33 and was born in Madrid, so in international competitions, she plays for the Spanish national team. The World Cup winning roster was 23 Spanish players. Of them, 21 signed letters in which they refused to play for Spain's national team until and unless changes were made. An additional 18 not on that roster have joined them. So Spain could not field a women's soccer team just a month after winning the biggest tournament in the world. The primary job of the Spanish Soccer Federation is to field a national team for international competitions, but the best players all refused to play in these competitions. Rubiales eventually resigned. His replacement then fired the team's controversial coach. But the players say that just making one or two replacements is not enough. For example, the players say the previous coach required them to keep their hotel doors unlocked so he could make sure they were in bed on time. He monitored who they saw and where they went. The players, who are professional athletes, are insisting on more changes and protections before they go back to play for Spain's national team. The Spanish Soccer Federation, however, was playing hardball. It said that any players who refused to play for the national team would be fined and suspended for 2 years. Players arrived grudgingly at Valencia, where they began training for upcoming games. However, the drama appears to have cooled off. The players, the Spanish Soccer Federation, and the government's sports council came to an agreement on ways to reform soccer in Spain. They will work together to implement more changes in the future. All but 2 players agreed to continue playing for the national team, and no player was punished for refusing to play. This was a story that I had my eye on weeks ago, and I kept waiting and waiting for Luis Rubiales to resign. I wanted to wait until it had a little bit of a conclusion before creating this episode, but weeks went by, then a month, and he still hadn't resigned. Well, finally, he's out, but there might be some new developments to the story. The good news is we have a way to keep you up to date on recent lesson topics, and that is our lesson emails. I love making these. They're so much better than they used to be, and I'm using the emails as a way to update you on previous stories so you can continue to feel connected to the English you're learning. If you're not getting those, make sure to go to plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L. If you do that, you'll start getting emails from JR on Mondays and Thursdays, packed with updates, links, quizzes, and more. plainenglish.com/mail, M-A-I-L. It's Monday, so I have an English quote for you to ponder and consider. Today's is from George MacDonald, a Scottish writer. He said, "To be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved." This is a good one to keep in mind for the Instagram age we live in. To be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved, says George MacDonald. Now, coming up next, the phrasal verb pile on. This is a really good expression, to pile on. This is a very visual one, so let's start with the word pile. A pile is like objects that are placed on top of one another. When JR does laundry, he takes his clothes out of the dryer and dumps them on his bed. He has a pile of clothes on his bed. He then leaves them there until the last minute because he hates folding his clothes. I have a pile of books on my desk. I have a pile of dirty dishes in the sink. So think about a pile like a lot of objects on top of one another. In a literal sense, pile on means to add more to the pile. So picture JR throwing some more clean clothes from the dryer on top of the ones that are in a pile on his bed. He's piling on. Imagine me adding my coffee cup to the top of the stack of dishes in my sink. Imagine me adding one more book to the pile on my desk. To pile on is to add to the pile. However, it's far more common to use pile on in a metaphorical sense, and that means to join in something that is already happening. So imagine that others are doing something and you join them. It's like you're jumping on top of the pile of people who are already doing something. You become part of the group of people all doing the same thing. In today's story, we talked about Luis Rubiales. He kissed a professional women's soccer player on the lips during a ceremony after the Women's World Cup. A lot of players on the team didn't like it. They signed a letter objecting to what happened. They refused to play again until there were major changes in the way soccer was organized and governed in Spain. Well, then, a lot of soccer fans expressed their support for the players. And then what happened? Only after the players and a lot of fans expressed their outrage, only then did government ministers and the international soccer community support Jenny Hermoso, and only then did they call for Luis Rubiales to resign. So that's why I said that government ministers and the international soccer community piled on. They joined a movement that was already in progress. We had the players, we had the fans all doing one thing, and then the government ministers and the international soccer community piled on. They joined an activity that was already happening. Picture them jumping onto the top of a pile. They piled on because they joined a movement in progress. The important thing is, the criticism has started, there was already momentum, and the people who piled on were joining something in progress. Oftentimes, pile on is used when the group is critical of someone or something. Sam Bankman-Fried was a darling of the crypto world. Everyone wanted to be his friend. Then his company collapsed, he was arrested, and nobody wanted to be his friend. He was arrested and charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and other things. He is being sued by other government entities. Well, journalists reported on his story, and many people criticized him. An independent manager was appointed to try to save what was left of his firm, FTX. So the criticism was alive and well. Sam Bankman-Fried was getting a lot of criticism, and for weeks others piled on. Former colleagues, former business partners, commentators, competitors in cryptocurrency, international regulators. They joined the movement that was already going on. They joined it in progress, so we say they piled on. Now, this isn't about whether the criticism is right or wrong. Pile on just describes people joining the criticism. TikTok is a great example. A lot of government agencies in the US and abroad have banned TikTok from official government devices. And then the CEO of TikTok went before the US Congress to defend his company and to try to assure the Congress that the Chinese government doesn't have access to TikTok data. But the lawmakers in that hearing just piled on. They joined the existing criticism of TikTok. Well, that's all for today for Plain English, Monday, October 9th, 2023. This was lesson 614. So if you're looking for the transcript, you can find it at plainenglish.com/614. Coming up on Thursday, new laws aim to protect kidfluencers. That's on Thursday. See you then.